What if I told you the Titanic tragedy was predicted? 14 years before it even happened. A ship called Titan striking an iceberg, sinking in the Atlantic, with eerie similarities to the real event. Coincidence? Or a hidden truth that history quietly buried? Welcome to Beyond Wonderworld. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time, because what you're about to hear might change everything you thought you knew about the Titanic disaster. In this deep dive, we'll uncover chilling predictions, explore bizarre survivor testimonies, and investigate theories suggesting the Titanic wasn't what it seemed. Stay with us as we reveal facts mainstream history often ignores. In 1898, 14 years before the Titanic's maiden voyage, a little-known author named Morgan Robertson wrote a novella titled Futility, The Wreck of the Titan. The story was eerily prophetic. It described an unsinkable British ocean liner named Titan, the largest ship of its time, striking an iceberg in the North Atlantic on an April night. The Titan, like the Titanic, had too few lifeboats and over 2,000 passengers. Now think about that. Both were around 800 feet long, both hit an iceberg on the starboard side, and both sank in the exact same region of the ocean. The similarities go beyond chance. Even experts today struggle to explain how a fictional book could mirror reality with such detail. Some believe Robertson had access to insider knowledge about ship engineering. Others go further, suggesting time travel, remote viewing, or even the idea that history repeats itself in eerie patterns. Whether coincidence or something deeper, futility raises serious questions. Was Morgan Robertson simply a visionary, or did he unintentionally expose a secret long before it was meant to be discovered? One of the most controversial and persistent theories surrounding the Titanic disaster is that the ship that sank in 1912 wasn't the Titanic at all. According to this theory, the ship that went down in the North Atlantic was actually the Titanic's nearly identical sister ship, the RMS Olympic. Here's the claim. The Olympic had sustained serious damage during a previous collision and wasn't insured for the full amount. Some theorists argue that the White Star Line, desperate to avoid financial ruin, secretly switched the ships. They say the Olympic was disguised as the Titanic and deliberately sunk in a carefully orchestrated insurance scam. Supporters point to subtle differences in window configurations, steel plating, and floor layouts that appear to match the Olympic more than the Titanic in surviving photos. There are also witness accounts from shipbuilders in Belfast claiming they worked on a ship swap. Of course, mainstream historians dismiss this theory, citing a lack of hard evidence and extensive documentation verifying the Titanic's identity. Still, for many, the idea that the world was duped into mourning the wrong ship adds yet another layer of mystery to the tragedy. One of the most talked about conspiracy theories involving the Titanic is the role of the powerful banker, J.P. Morgan. He was not just a wealthy American financier, he was also the owner of the International Mercantile Marine Company, which controlled the White Star Line, the company that operated the Titanic. Here's where it gets suspicious. J.P. Morgan had reserved a luxurious suite on the Titanic's maiden voyage. But at the very last minute, he canceled his trip, citing health concerns. Oddly, he was later spotted relaxing in France just days after the disaster. Now, here's where it gets darker. On board the Titanic were three of Morgan's most vocal business opponents: Benjamin Guggenheim, Isidor Straus, and John Jacob Astor IV. These men were influential figures who reportedly opposed the creation of the Federal Reserve, a banking system that Morgan and his allies strongly supported. All three of these powerful men died when the ship sank. Some theorists believe the Titanic was part of a grand plan to remove opposition to the Federal Reserve. Coincidence? Or was it a carefully orchestrated financial chess move? On the night of April 14, 1912, the Titanic was cruising through the North Atlantic at nearly full speed. Despite repeated iceberg warnings from nearby ships, the crew continued forward, confident in the vessel's supposed invincibility. But what really happened in those final hours? Survivor testimonies reveal that many passengers were still awake, some enjoying the music in first-class lounges, others strolling the promenade. The night was eerily calm, and the ocean looked like a sheet of glass. No moon, no waves, just silence. Around 11:40 p.m., lookouts spotted a massive iceberg dead ahead. There was no time to turn fully. The ship struck the iceberg, scraping its starboard side and tearing open several compartments. What's crucial is how quickly chaos unfolded afterward. Lifeboats were lowered only half full. Orders were conflicting. Many believed it was just a precaution, until it was too late. Within 3 hours, the Titanic disappeared beneath the waves. These moments are vital. They show us that arrogance, miscommunication, and poor safety decisions, not just bad luck, played a devastating role in this tragedy. As Titanic sank in the freezing Atlantic, help may have been closer than we think. The SS Californian, a cargo passenger ship, was reportedly just 10 to 20 miles away. Its wireless operator had already gone to bed. That night, Titanic sent multiple distress calls, but the Californian didn't respond. Here's where the controversy deepens. Crew members aboard the Californian reported seeing strange lights and distress rockets in the distance. Yet their captain, Stanley Lord, didn't take decisive action. Some suggest he ignored the crisis due to uncertainty. Others believe he feared the ice field he was surrounded by. When news broke that Titanic had sunk, the world was shocked, not just by the loss, but by the idea that rescue might have been possible. In later inquiries, Captain Lord was criticized, but never officially charged. He maintained he didn't know the gravity of the situation. Could hundreds more lives have been saved if the Californian had responded faster, or was it already too late by the time they noticed? One of the most mysterious elements of the Titanic tragedy lies in its SOS signals, and who did or didn't hear them. Titanic was among the first ships to use both CQD and SOS distress codes, thanks to its modern Marconi wireless system. At 11:40 p.m., after striking the iceberg, Titanic's operators frantically sent distress messages. Some were received by nearby ships, like the Carpathia, which would eventually arrive too late. But other messages were reportedly intercepted as far away as Newfoundland. Then comes the eerie part. Several ships reported hearing the Titanic's signals fade away into silence. Abruptly. It was like the ship vanished from the airwaves, well before it actually went under. And here's something even more chilling. Radio operators on land claim to have received garbled or broken transmissions from Titanic even after it was believed to have sunk. Were these just atmospheric interference, echoes, or a ghost signal of the ship that refused to be silenced? In 1985, the world was stunned when Dr. Robert Ballard and his team discovered Titanic's final resting place, over 12,000 feet beneath the surface of the Atlantic Ocean. The wreck was split in two, lying about 1,170 feet apart on the ocean floor. But what the team found raised even more questions than answers. The bow section was astonishingly well preserved, almost eerily so. Meanwhile, the stern was shattered, as if it had imploded under pressure. This contrast puzzled experts. Did the ship break in two above the surface or as it sank? The damage patterns became a point of serious investigation. Around the wreck, personal items were found scattered. Shoes, combs, crockery, preserved in the cold, dark abyss. But here's where it gets mysterious. Some researchers claim the ship's break and angle of descent don't fully match survivor testimonies. Were some details hidden or misunderstood? There's also the enigma of Titanic's missing piece, a large central section between the bow and stern that remains elusive. Some believe it holds the final answers. Why hasn't it been found? Was it disintegrated, or was it removed? Some researchers claim the ship that sank wasn't the Titanic at all, but her sister ship, the Olympic. This controversial theory begins with the fact that Olympic was damaged in a collision months before Titanic's maiden voyage. She was rushed back to Harland Wolff for repairs, which some theorists believe included a covert switch of nameplates and minor design elements. The idea? That the heavily insured Titanic was deliberately sent to sea as the older, financially failing Olympic, doomed to sink in a planned disaster and trigger a massive insurance payout. They point to inconsistencies in the ship's porthole arrangements and minor design changes between the two vessels. While mainstream historians reject this as baseless, believers in the switch theory insist the evidence is hidden in plain sight. If you didn't subscribe to our channel, please do it now. There's more deep-sea mystery ahead. If the switch theory was real, what would be the motive? Many theorists believe it all boils down to insurance fraud. After the Olympics accident with the HMS Hawk, she was considered uninsurable or too costly to repair. The White Star Line and financier JP Morgan allegedly stood to lose millions. The theory claims Morgan orchestrated a grand deception, switching the damaged Olympic for her brand new sister Titanic, which was then intentionally sunk to claim the insurance payout. Morgan was supposed to sail on Titanic but canceled at the last minute, adding fuel to suspicion. Meanwhile, several prominent critics of the Federal Reserve System died in the disaster, sparking even more conspiracies. Critics argue that no solid evidence supports these claims. Yet the timing, passenger list, and Morgan's sudden absence continue to raise eyebrows. One of the most haunting details about the Titanic disaster was its glaring lack of lifeboats. Despite being able to carry over 2,200 passengers, Titanic only had 20 lifeboats, enough for roughly half that number. Shockingly, this wasn't against regulations at the time. The British Board of Trade's outdated rules only required ships above 10,000 tons to carry 16 lifeboats, even though Titanic weighed over 46,000 tons. Some say this was simply a tragic oversight in safety planning, but others suggest something more calculated. Was this decision made to maintain the ship's aesthetic appeal and deck space for luxury? Or, as conspiracy theorists argue, was it a deliberate choice tied to a larger plan? Regardless, the result was catastrophic. Hundreds perished not because of the impact, but because there was nowhere to go. If you're invested in uncovering the truths of Titanic, please subscribe. We're just scratching the surface. Titanic was marketed as practically unsinkable, a phrase that echoed around the world and gave passengers and crew a false sense of security. But that myth didn't originate from the shipbuilders themselves. It was largely a product of media exaggeration and public imagination. Harland Wolff had claimed that the ship was designed to be unsinkable under certain conditions, thanks to its advanced watertight compartment system. But those compartments didn't extend high enough. When the iceberg tore a hole across 6 compartments, the water overflowed from one to the next, dooming the ship. The confidence created by the unsinkable label possibly led to fewer safety precautions being taken, and even contributed to crew hesitation during the evacuation. In a cruel twist of irony, Titanic's supposed invincibility may have sealed its fate. Perhaps one of the most debated aspects of the Titanic tragedy is the role of the SS Californian. Just 10 to 20 miles from Titanic's final position, the Californian stopped for the night due to ice warnings and turned off its wireless radio. Meanwhile, Titanic was desperately firing distress rockets into the dark sky. Crew members aboard the Californian saw the rockets, but dismissed them as company signals. Their wireless operator, off-duty and asleep, never heard Titanic's SOS. Could they have saved lives? Possibly. With hours to respond, the Californian could have reached Titanic before it sank. The American and British inquiries later condemned the Californian's inaction as one of the great failures of maritime history. But was it simple negligence or something more mysterious? Theories have swirled for decades. Was the Californian's crew ordered to ignore the signals? Or did they truly not understand what they were seeing? The answers may never fully surface. After more than a century, the Titanic's sinking is still a subject of intense investigation and modern theory. Beyond the iceberg, some researchers point to a massive coal fire in one of the ship's bunkers that may have weakened the steel hull days before the collision. Infrared scans of the wreck show signs of heat damage. Others cite brittle steel quality of the era, which shattered on impact instead of bending. Then there's the theory of poor rivets, too weak for such a massive vessel, leading to the hull plates bursting open. Even the weather is under scrutiny. A rare optical illusion caused by atmospheric refraction may have hidden the iceberg from view, delaying the crew's reaction. While no single theory explains it all, each one adds to the complex puzzle of how the world's unsinkable ship could meet such a tragic end. The sinking of the Titanic was more than a maritime disaster. It was a turning point in history. Over 1,500 souls lost, each with stories, dreams, and destinies cut short. But from this loss came change. Maritime laws were rewritten. Lifeboats became mandatory. Radios stayed manned 24/7. An international ice patrol was formed. the Titanic tragedy forced the world to confront its blind faith in technology. Today, Titanic lives on in our collective memory, not just as a ship, but as a symbol of human ambition, hubris, and hope. Every dive to its wreck, every recovered relic, every story told, brings us closer to the lives behind the legend. And still, we wonder, what more is buried down there? What secrets remain, locked in silence 2 miles beneath the waves? If you've stayed with us this far, thank you. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. We're just getting started uncovering the truths behind the world's greatest mysteries.